Good morning, all of our Cal-Am residents. Welcome to our second virtual cooking class. I believe Chef Benny at Valle d'Oro did his first class last week. Today I will be demonstrating a hot Italian soup, followed by a braised beef marinara, followed by a fresh cannoli with chocolate chip filling. But first, we're gonna go ahead and get you started with a little side salad. While you eat your side salad, I'm gonna go ahead and get started with this hot Italian soup. It's a very nice, simple, quick recipe. It is a hot Italian sausage link, and you could double or triple this. I couldn't see you doing less. It is just one Italian sausage. I do apologize. This is from Jan Meyer at Val Vista Village's recipe. She's in the Volume 2 cookbook. Let's get started. So I'm just going to cut these into 1 or ½ inch pieces. I went ahead and cut those a little bit of a bias. We're going to add our oil to our preheated pan. And then we're just going to brown these sausages. I'm going to give that just another minute to go ahead and brown. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and chop the spinach that's in the cookbook. You'll get this recipe. So you give it kind of a rough chop. We'll go ahead and add the fresh chopped garlic. We'll give that a quick stir. Can everybody see that in there? Okay, now we're going to go ahead and add the northern white beans. Give that a quick stir. If there's any brown bits on the bottom of the pot, go ahead and stir those in. Scrape the bottom. This is a relatively quick recipe. It'd be great. You suddenly ended up with some company over to your house and wanted to have them over for dinner. You could whip this recipe together, as you'll see, in just a few minutes. We'll go ahead and add a little bit of salt and pepper. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the spinach. We'll give that a quick stir. And the recipe called for a bone broth, chicken broth. I had some regular chicken base I just made a broth with. So that's the only difference in today's recipe that I changed. Other than that, we did use the organic northern white beans. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the chicken broth. Quick stir. I'm also going to go ahead and add the marjoram that's also in the recipe. With dry herbs, you want to add those as soon as you can when cooking. You don't really want to finish with a dry herb. You always want to finish with a fresh herb. The fresh herbs oils will release within the hot products, and you'll get the flavor out of that as opposed to the flavor being cooked out. Okay, the next recipe I'm going to get ready for is the braised beef marinara. That is my grandmother's recipe. We're just finishing up with the Great Northern Beef hot Italian soup. We're going to garnish it with a little bit of fresh Parmesan cheese. And then I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and we're going to go ahead and get started on Grandma's braised beef marinara. So go ahead and snack on your soup while we get started with this braised beef marinara. What we're going to start with is some chuck. I do have, it's called a chuck tenderloin, or teres major for the technical term. We're going to go ahead and cut these in thirds. That is a typo in the recipe book. This is in volume 1. It is My Grandma's Marinara. The typo is not 1-inch cubes, about 1.5 to 2 inches. The meat is gonna shrink. So you want a nice, decent sized shred. You can either shred this up, or like I'm gonna demonstrate, you could serve this as a nice braised, tender piece of meat on top of your pasta smothered in the marinara. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna cut these in thirds. And why I like to use chuck, for any of you that are watching this video that haven't been to our cooking class, I have used chuck quite a bit. It's because it has the collagen and the fibers in it that make it, keep it nice and it's tender, but it's not real dry, as if you were to use a piece of sirloin or a piece of say filet mignon. Is real lean, there's no fat to it, therefore when you eat it, it's tender, but there's really not a lot of flavor, and it's dry. So you'll feel that dryness in your mouth as you eat your supu. That's why I recommend definitely using chuck. I would get a chuck roast, something with a little bit of thicker content to it, as opposed to just a real thin chuck steak. So we went ahead and we cut those into thirds. I'm gonna lay them back out on the cutting board. We're gonna go ahead and season them up, a little bit of salt and pepper, put a little oil in our pan, get them nice and seared. Get some nice color on there. The searing is important. It's gonna kind of hold your meat together a little bit better as it braises, and it's gonna have a real nice color to it also. Go ahead and flip those over. And how's your Great Northern bean soup with spinach and hot Italian sausage? Pretty tasty. Thanks again, Jan Meyer, for that at Val Vista Villages. It looks like our residents are enjoying that soup. More salt and pepper. Now we're gonna go ahead and add a little, I'm gonna take off my gloves. We're gonna add a little oil to the saute pan. I always like to finish my product, my Italian sausage. I like to cook with canola oil. I feel that if you cook with extra virgin olive oil and it gets too hot, it gets a little bitter. Also becomes toxic at about 260 degrees. So I started mine with a little bit of canola oil. I like to finish with a little bit of olive oil, then you get that real olive oil flavor. You can see that my pan is nice and hot. It's starting to smoke. That's what you're looking for. We're gonna go ahead and start by searing these off. We're gonna do this in a couple of batches so you don't crowd your pan. If you crowd your pan, it's gonna cool it off a little bit too much. Then your temperature's gonna drop, and your meat's essentially gonna steam, and you won't get a whole lot of color on it. If you have a pan big enough, you could leave these whole to just get nice color on both sides, as opposed to cutting it up ahead of time. Just another minute on the other side. This is 1 1/4 pieces. By now the pan's nice and hot. I'm going to add another one in there. I'll go ahead and dice this onion up real quick. So I'll go to a small to medium dice. You want to cut everything about as even as possible, so everything cooks about the same amount of time. Again, and also in this recipe, just as any other recipe, you can add anything to this. You can add mushrooms to it, zucchini, squash. I would recommend taking out the seeds of the zucchini and squash. It will have more of a bite to it, as opposed to being just kind of a soggy piece of vegetable that you added. I'm going to move that around a little bit. See, we're almost brown on the other side. If you can see that really nice color, the really nice sear on that side. just gonna wait for the go ahead and pull. I'm gonna go ahead and trade out the seared. See, we got a nice color on that side too. And as you can see, this is building a little bit of fond on the bottom of the pan, and that's all gonna be really nice flavor when you add your onions. It's gonna help brown your onions. When you add your garlic, and then you're gonna deglaze with the red wine. Some people put sugar in their sauce. I like to utilize the red wine for that. As you reduce it, it becomes quite sweet. I have reduced red wine low enough that you could put it on a pancake as a great startup. Has some great flavor. Okay, now that we have both sides of the chuck has nice sear on it, if you can see that. We're gonna pull this and let it set aside. And then we're going to go ahead and get started with our onions and garlic. We're going to go ahead and start with our onions. We're going to saute that just for a bit. Let them get some color until they're about a light golden brown, translucent color. About halfway through, we're going to go ahead and add our garlic. And let that cook, and then all that lovely brown bits on the bottom is going to come up when we deglaze with our red wine. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of salt to the onions. The salt helps the onions kind of release their natural juices. And onions also, if you keep caramelizing them, they'll turn a little sweet too. That's another reason I don't really put sugar in my marinara. Some people will add fresh carrot to add that sweetness, a natural sweetness, as opposed to just cane sugar. So you can see those juices are already kind of taking up some of that fond on the bottom of the pan. Does seem like a lot of onions, but after this cooks for quite a bit, as you can see in the recipe book, you can cook it in the crock pot. You can just simmer it real low in a large pot, 8-quart pot, for the full recipe. It takes a while for the chuck to actually break down and become really tender, as opposed to some of your leaner meats. It might get tender sooner, but it will be dry, and that's what you want to prevent, is dry meat. Okay, those are getting nice and brown, a little bit translucent. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of garlic to that. Again, it's a lot of garlic. It seems like a lot of garlic. But you have a lot of product here because you still have the stewed tomatoes, the tomato sauce, the tomato paste. Well, and the difference if you cook this in your crock pot is it might gain a little bit more moisture from the steam that builds, per se, on the pot, and it won't reduce quite as much as if you're doing this open-faced pot. I recommend, if you are going to do it in a crock pot, go ahead and take the lid off after it comes to a nice heat and you see that steam building up. That way it will evaporate and reduce just a little bit. It still won't reduce as much as if you were just to do this in a pot. But doing it just in a pot, you have to make sure that it's extremely low and you don't burn the bottom, because then you'll just ruin your sauce. All right, so the garlic is getting nice and golden brown. Onions are nice. Like Emerald says, if you have that smell-o-vision right now, oh my goodness, it smells so wonderful in here. As you all know, when you're cooking at home, garlic, onions, and you add, say, peppers to it, wow, it really makes it smell good. All right, so we're gonna deglaze a little bit, and you'll see all this brown stuff come off the bottom of the pan. See that? We now have a clean pan, look at there. But I'm gonna go ahead and add A little more of that red wine. We're gonna let that reduce. So for one, it doesn't have that alcoholic flavor to it, burns off the alcohol, but also so it gets that sweetness to it, the natural sweetness from the grapes. I'm gonna go ahead and turn up the temperature just a little bit. And you'll see this reduces quite quickly. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start adding everything to this pot. So I'm gonna go ahead and put in the bottom down there. We're gonna go ahead and put our chuck pieces in there. Maybe I'll move this over, sorry, so you can see this in the mirror. Any juices, you definitely wanna just throw any of that bloody juice in there. We're gonna go ahead and add the tomatoes. And it does state in the recipe whole stewed tomatoes. You don't necessarily have to use whole stewed tomatoes. I prefer it, but I do break them up just a little bit. And as you'll see with the finished product, they break down quite a bit. And here I have a little bit of the finished product here for you. Can everybody see that out there? Let me get my spoon. Now see, those were whole stewed tomatoes. All I did was smash them in half with a spoon, and as you can see, they break down quite a bit. See how tender that meat is? Just beautiful. Okay. Okay, now this is reduced. If you kept on reducing it, it's super sweet. I believe the terminology is au sec. We're not going to quite bring it to there. Okay, now we're just going to add that to the pot. I'm going to go ahead and put the pot on the burner. Give it time to warm up over here. And this little stovetop thing is wanting to shut off on me. There we go. And there is a little something different you might have seen in the recipe also. Again, it's in the volume 1 cookbook that we had sent out. Is baking soda. Not too many people will put baking soda in their marinara. I do that. It helps get rid of some of the acidity in it. This is what Grandma used to do, or she would tell me, Keith, just leave your wooden spoon in your marinara as you cook it. Is there a science behind that? I'm not quite sure. I do know that just to be on the safe side, I like to add just a little bit of baking soda. And I'm going to demonstrate that with the finished product here in just a moment, because this is going to take at least 4 hours to cook. Now I demonstrate, or in the cookbook it does say up to 8 hours. Essentially that's to really get some good flavor out of your tomatoes. And as you can see, I'm just kind of breaking those a little bit. I'm not mashing them up, I'm just kind of breaking them and releasing the juices. And we are going to go ahead and add all this juice and just a little bit of tomato sauce. I do a lot of cooking by look, texture, feel. So what I had in the bowl here is equivalent to 2, I believe, 15-ounce cans of stewed tomatoes. I think that's about enough right there. I will continue cooking this. This will be eaten. We're not just going to discard it. And here goes the sauce that was in with the cans. Because I had everything measured out for a half a recipe, but decided last minute to do a quarter recipe. That's why I'm going to have some of this extra product left over. I believe I have the equivalent of about half a can of stewed tomatoes left. I'm going to use probably about half of this tomato sauce. I do like to finish, I'll add a little bit of tomato paste now, but I'll add a little bit more per se. If your marinara is just a little bit more watery, has a little more water to it than you like, you can add a little tomato paste to it. As it cooks, it will thicken up a little. Again, sometimes I'll add a little more onion to it, I'll add a little more garlic. After I stir and kind of look at it, smell it, taste it. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and add the baking soda to it. And you'll see it takes a few minutes, but it'll turn into kind of a witch's brew. You see that getting all nice and foamy? It's just extracting any of the acids out of it. Set that aside. I'm gonna add just a touch more tomato paste. Tomato paste here in the pot that's going to continue cooking, and then we'll come back and finish that with some more tomato paste towards the end, depending on not only flavor but texture. Just going to stir that in a little bit, and you see it getting real nice and bubbly in there. That's just extracting any acids in there. So one of the worst things is having Italian food not done right, and in the middle of the night you're waking up all night long because you have heartburn. This will help prevent that. We're going to go ahead and start a plate here. I went ahead and pre-cooked some noodles. Looks like a lot, but that's because halfway through eating you're going to realize, oh dang, that was so good that I need some more. Now, one thing I like about the braised meat sauce is I like to serve it with the nice big chunks, kind of like this, and then let your guests kind of break it up. But as you'll see, there's plenty of shredded meat in here. So a little tomatoey, little chunks of beef. And as always, you would serve this with some garlic bread, garnish with a little fresh parsley. And then there you have it. A little fresh parsley over here. And of course, some fresh Parmesan cheese. I always like a little extra Parmesan cheese. Here we have a little garlic bread. And there you have it. Now while I get straightened up here a little bit, we're gonna go into the fresh cannoli chocolate chip filling, and I'm gonna demonstrate how to make your own cannoli shell if you have not done that before. Quite easy, quick. The most important thing is having a thermometer for your fryer if you do not have a countertop fryer. Welcome back, everybody. Now we're going to proceed into the dessert portion of this menu. How was your braised beef marinara? Great? Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed that. So the first thing is we're going to go 1 3/4 cup all-purpose flour into a food processor. We're going to go ahead and this is 1.5 ounces of cubed room temperature butter. And then we're going to go ahead with 1.5 teaspoons of salt, or I'm sorry, yeah, sugar, granulated sugar. And we're just going to give that a pulse to mix the sugar, the butter, and the flour. Technical error, sorry. See, it's still looking pretty dry, but that's because we didn't add the egg or the Marsala wine yet. So we're gonna go ahead and add the egg and 3/4 or so of the Marsala wine. We'll reserve some in case you have to add any more later. And then 1 whole egg. And again, we're gonna put just a touch of salt in there. We're gonna pulse that again until a dough ball forms. As you see, it's gonna slowly come together. There it goes. Pretty quick and easy, harmless. As you can see, it cleaned up the sides of your food processor pretty well. Nothing left really behind. You're gonna pull your dough bowl out and pull the rest of your ingredients out. It's not real gooey. It's nice and fluffy. And then you're just gonna mix this a little bit. And then you'll form it into a ball, and then you'll place it in a bowl. You'll go ahead and oil your bowl up. Just a little bit of oil. Roll your ball around in that oil. Put a piece of cellophane on there, and then you'll want to let this relax for 30 minutes to 2 hours. You don't want to let it get too dried out, so you'll want to definitely saran wrap that. We're going to set that aside, and this is what the finished product looks like. I made this earlier this morning. So at this point, you're going to want to cut it into 4 to 8 different pieces. In the long run, I'm going to go ahead and cut it into 4, and that should give us a minimum of 2 to 3 rounds out of that. So we're going to go ahead and use our rolling pin. We'll roll this out to 1/16 of an inch. Move some of my stuff out of the way. This is all going to be for the cannoli filling. Okay, so we're getting down to about a 1/16 of an inch. And then you could use whatever size cookie cutter you'd like. We are gonna go ahead and use approximately a 4-inch cookie cutter. It's gonna make a little bit smaller cannoli. And here we're gonna get 1, 2, 3. We're gonna go ahead and you'll reserve this, ball it back together, and put it back in your bowl for your next cannolis. Now we're gonna roll this out just a little bit thinner. I'd say we're about a 1/4 of an inch right there, but you wanna stretch it out so it wraps all the way around your cannoli steel roller. And the roller is what you're gonna fry it in. So this is how they get that nice little round shape with the open end. So now, whoops, it's important, you're gonna wanna oil your tube just a little bit. And then you're gonna roll your cannoli all the way around. Press it in the middle to get it to hold, and then set it aside. We're gonna go ahead and do 3 of these. And I'm doing these first, so while they cool, we'll make the filling. And then by the time we're done making the filling, we'll go ahead and stuff it. I was just telling my director earlier that's videoing this, one of my first, or about 5 years ago, not my first, but I did a stage at a restaurant by South Mountain. And wouldn't you know, the day I go in for a stage, they had a wedding for 300 people. Guess what the dessert was? Cannolis. So Chef Keith got to get real familiar with cannolis. It was quite a process, took quite a while. They used me definitely for the 2 hours. If you're asking or wondering what a stage is, a stage is a working interview when you're in the chef's world, or say you're applying for a lead line cook or something like that. Just not a beginner. Most of the time you will do a stage and be ready to do a stage when you are out there for doing a job search for a new position. They want to know and make sure that you can hold up to your resume, that you know your way around a kitchen, that you know all the lingo, hotel pans, different sizes, all that type of stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my food processor out of the way here, and we'll show you how to fry these up. Okay, I have my cannolis around the tubes, the cannoli tubes. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little egg wash. It's gonna help give it its golden brown color. Egg wash all 3 and just set them aside. We're only gonna do 2 at a time. The fryer is a little bit smaller. I feel I only fit 2 comfortably in there. One important step is to make sure that you press your cannoli at the seam very well, or as you can see, this is what's gonna happen. Still edible, but definitely not a cannoli. We're gonna go ahead and drop those into the fryer. We're gonna give it just a minute. We're gonna shake the basket a little and make sure that they don't stick to the bottom of the basket. I think that's good. We're gonna pull it out, it's nice and golden brown. We're just gonna let that rest and let it cool. You definitely wanna touch that. It's 365 degrees. Okay, the cannoli filling is 8 ounces of cream cheese, softened, or mascarpone. You wanna add your powdered sugar to it. Just kind of mix everything with that powdered sugar. And then now we're going to go ahead and fold in our vanilla. And my chocolate chips. And that is 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1/4 cup of chocolate chips. Now you can reserve half of your chocolate chips and dip them at the end, sprinkle them on the end. We're gonna finish mixing this. You can put it in a piping bag. If you do not have a piping bag, a Ziploc bag. We get the product filled in there. Get that down into the corner. And there is your piping bag. I'm gonna go ahead and cut enough of the tip off with those chocolate chips. We're gonna go ahead and pull the cannoli shells off of the tubes. See how easy that came off? That's why it's so important to pre-oil your cannoli tube. Yes, it is going in a fryer full of oil, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not gonna stick. So let me go ahead and get this out of the way. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna pipe into each end. I may not have left me quite enough tip on that. Here we go. And it's about half full right there. Now we're gonna go to the other side. You can see that. It's half full there. Now we're gonna go to the other end. Just clean it up just a little bit. silly. And then you could garnish that per se with a little powdered sugar, some cocoa powder, whatever you like. And I think that is the class for us today. Thank you all. We definitely miss you. We miss having you at our cooking class. And look forward to seeing you hopefully sometime in the season. Thank you so much and have a great day.